Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Happy Doc. I'm very excited to have my friend here, Dave Lacamera, on the call with me today. Dave, how are you doing?
Taylor, what's up, man? I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. There's so much we can talk about. And Dave, we've been friends for a little bit now, but you just recently moved to Florida. How's that?
It's amazing, man. So yeah, just a little background. I was in Philly for about 5 years. I went to Temple. So I was used to the city life, you know what I mean? And then eventually I was like, I got to get out, go more towards nature. So now I'm in Tampa, Florida, or St. Pete technically, but it's beautiful. We got the beaches. We also got the city a short drive away. So it's amazing. I love it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Obviously it's a little bit less exciting. I know you guys have to be a little bit more conscious with COVID and everything. But I think just to have the beach there and everything, and to be able to, work, but still also play and go outside, yeah. I'm sure that's amazing.
It's worth it. It's worth the risk.
That's awesome. Well, hopefully you guys are staying safe and everything. But for today's call and talk, I think it's just such an interesting topic. So I deal with often physicians, health professionals. Obviously, there's coaches out there as well. But a lot of people, especially now because of digital services and because of people trying to build something, even if it's freelance work or whatever, you got to know how to sell. And for me personally, we were chatting a little bit before, but for me personally, it's if you don't learn this stuff, you might make a lot of assumptions, or you might just kind of go for it, but you don't know what you don't know. And I'll tell you right now, there's a lot of stuff that I don't know when it comes to selling something, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think understanding the sales process, understanding, your course and what you're doing, the energy of selling, I think is really provocative. And I'd love to talk about that, but I just think it's such an important topic. So why did you take on sort of this field of the energy of selling and teaching people how to sell?
Yeah, so that's a great question, because you brought up some good points about the kind of era we're in right now, where almost everybody, or at least most people, are starting their own businesses. They're having a side hustle, even if it's some freelancing or whatever it might be. And that's kind of where I started. You know what I mean? So I started off with some freelancing. I was in the digital marketing space. So and really what I was doing was I was trying to get more clients, just make more money and build a business. And I thought I was I'm really good at what I do. Clients should just come to me, right? That was just my assumption. I was well, clients are just going to flow to me. I could make the sale and I could start working with them. But I got hit with reality really quick. You know what I mean? I was well, it doesn't matter how good I am at what I do. If I don't know how to communicate my value, if I don't know how to sell what I'm doing, then I'm never going to be able to build a business that's at least sustainable and can sustain the lifestyle that I want. So that was really when I started to make that shift. I was well, I need to learn how to sell. I need to learn how to communicating and actually learn how to make money. You know what I mean? Yeah. Especially with everything going on in the world right now. I mean, with the pandemic just hitting, it's more important than ever. You know what I mean? Because when things are happening in the external, if you have your basics down, if you know how to sell, you know how to communicate and really show you who you are and what you offer, then you're really never going to have to worry about going hungry. And that's really what turned me on to sales in the first place, was that I don't want just financial freedom. I want financial confidence. And when you have confidence, true financial confidence, nothing in the world can really make me have that fear that, oh no, I might not be able to pay my rent again.
Wow.
I might not be able to buy food. So sales really brought that confidence to me.
Yeah, I love what you said there. And I really want to actually focus in on that for a second. I don't want financial freedom. I want financial confidence. And that's really cool. Yeah, financial freedom would be great. But I think what you're saying is, no matter where you're at, whether you're financially free or not, you want to be able to build the opportunities to make sure you have consistent flow or financial flow, which I think is a really interesting idea. And so sales, if I'm paraphrasing you correctly, is if you understand this art and you understand this form, this is a way for you to have that confidence.
Exactly. And Taylor, it's funny because like we were even saying, like the era we're in, everyone, like, I don't know about you, but I get hit with ads, I get hit with DMs every single day with people like, hey, learn how to build this funnel or build a webinar or start a YouTube channel to get clients. And I made the mistake when I first got started, when I was first starting to build my business, and really build that up, was I thought all those shiny objects would bring me wealth. I thought they would bring me freedom, and I thought they'd bring me financial confidence. But what I've learned since starting and to where I'm at now is the quicker the money comes in, the quicker it could get taken away. So just to give you an example, like if you're like, oh, well, I don't need to learn how to sell, I'm just going to bypass that and just build a funnel, run some ads, and hope that I could just make money on autopilot. And while that sounds great on paper and it might work for a window of time, there's going to be a time where something happens where what would you do if that funnel stopped working? Or what would you do if something outside in the external world hit again, like an economic disaster? So having that skill set, that developed skill set of learning how to sell and communicate, that's what gives you that confidence. You know what I mean? So no matter what shiny object thing you're doing, it couldn't be taken away much, much quicker than if you were to have that strong foundation of your sales skills. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And that's, why I'm excited to have you on, is for me to ask you those questions about, what are those foundational skills? How are we going to start to develop those things? Because again, I'm physician trained, right? Like I talked to you before, clients come to me. I have a service that people need. I've never been taught to sell, but I also understand that for other people and also myself, if I want to build out something more beyond, if I want to bring something valuable to the table, I'm going to need to have the skills to convey that value in a way that's effective, but not scare people off, right? So with all that being said, what are some fundamentals or what are some common mistakes that maybe you see that you just want to drill into people's heads, like, come on and shake them? Like, what do we have to do to start to build out an effective sales process?
Yeah. So really the biggest thing that I see, so if you think about sales, unfortunately, a lot of people have a negative or really not a good relationship with selling. They think it's gross. They think of the used car salesman, and it's like the pushy, salesy type of person. And the reason why we feel that way is because people are not making aligned offers. Their offers are not aligned with who they're communicating with. So to give you an example, if I were to go try to sell my services to try to coach someone who's already a multi-millionaire, multi-billionaire, it's not an aligned offer because they already know how to sell. They already have that part of their business down. Can people get better? Of course. But the reason is like, I'm sure you've gotten hit up or you've gotten offered things that were like, you don't even know me. Like, why are you offering this to me? Like, I don't need this. So that's why people get that weird kind of gross feeling when it comes to sales. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to make sure that you are making an aligned offer to your audience, that you're communicating with the right people and making an offer that's actually going to help them. So that's number one, to really build that. And then next is building relationships. So like I keep saying, we're in the digital era where everyone's on their phone, everyone's on social media. So one of the things that I teach is I teach people how to build relationships through messaging, whether it's through Instagram, Facebook, it doesn't matter. And the big thing here is that I don't want people to just start saying like, hey, here's my link, check this out. You know what I mean? Because that's also pushy. You don't even know them yet. So the very first thing in sales is you need to build a relationship and you need to get to know who they are. So it's really, you're playing the doctor. Either you're literally a doctor or you're in another business. But the point is you're being the doctor and you're gathering information so you could diagnose them. So the reason why that's so important is because you're not just going into this conversation with the intent to sell them. You're going in there with the intent to get to know them, build a relationship, to see if you could even help them in the first place. So those are really the biggest foundations when it comes to starting to get to know how to sell better. Because if you don't have these two things down, it doesn't matter who you talk to. you're going to be playing the numbers game. You're really going to be trying to put out as much as you can with very, very little return.
So let's talk about, you brought up those two really strong points, right? Make aligned offers and build relationships, right?
Right.
And I think one of the things, as I was even like thinking about it, alignment. Are you trying to sell a $10,000 product to someone who can only afford $100, or vice versa? Are you selling a $100 product to someone who really is looking for a high-end quality service or something, right? So how do you set up things to make sure that you're aligned? Like, what are you doing to do that?
So that's a good question. So what the very first steps is you got to get to know who your ideal client is. Like, who's your ideal client avatar? Who would be like, if you just close your eyes and picture, who would be like a dream client for you? And think of everything from demographics to like, where do they live? How much money are they making? Well, like what income bracket are they in? To even psychographics, like how do they think? How do they act? Because the important thing with that is you got to get to know who you're even communicating with first, and you got to communicate in a way that they understand. Because at the end of the day, what happens with a lot of coaches, a lot of consultants, is they'll think in their head, oh, this is what my client should know. But at the end of the day, you don't need to communicate what you think they should know. You gotta communicate what they need to hear or what they want to hear. Because once they start to hear that, they'll start to engage with you. So does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. So what you're telling me is, if, like, for example, let's say my ideal client is a medical student, right? I need to get into the medical students' heads. I need to understand where they live. Like, are they on Facebook? Are they on Instagram? Are they on Twitter? I need to understand what their worries are. I need to understand, like, who is this human? And then what do I need to be saying, whether it's like on a YouTube video or whatever, in my content or how I'm reaching out, to make sure I'm grabbing that human, right? And I think something we talked about before, in a different conversation, is like, if you're not specific, you're not really going to reach anyone, right?
That's correct. Yeah, exactly. And you're right when you say, like, you got to get to know them first, because a huge step that a lot of coaches, consultants, or other business owners make is they don't get to do the market research. They don't get to know who their client is. Like, I literally had interview calls where I'd ask them a list of questions, my ideal client, to get to know who they are, what they think about, and all those different questions, like what their pain points are, so I could communicate that better in my marketing message. So that's really important, because only then can you create an aligned offer. You can't create an aligned offer based off of assumption. That's what a lot of people do. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, if you're creating it off of assumption, you can't really expect to get much back from it. And you're going to do a lot of testing and a lot of failing. It's just going to waste a lot of time. So get to know who they are first, get to know their pain points, what their ultimate vision looks like, and just get to know who they are and really get in their head. So that's like step one, before you even create that offer, to make sure it's aligned.
Yeah, so that seems, like a really, powerful idea here. And the other thing that I really like that you said was build relationships, right? Because I think oftentimes, and I think I make this problem too when I'm building out something, is I try to sell something right away. I try to get to business right away, but maybe I'm not just having the conversation. I'm not like really getting to know the person, their life, and who they are. And I think oftentimes, especially when I'm dealing with someone else who's trying to sell me something, it feels really inauthentic. So what is your goal when you talk about building relationships for the sake of selling? What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So basically what I do is I even have an entire script where it's like, I need to have like a certain questions to ask to get to know if I could actually help them. Like, that's really what my intention is. My intention is not to get to sell them. I need to get to know, like, hey, like, where are you at in your business? Like, who do you serve? Like, how's your journey as an entrepreneur going? Because if someone tells me like, oh, they're like completely content, they're making like 20 grand a month in their income, and they're not looking to scale, then there's nothing for me to help them with. You know what I mean? So really what I'm trying to get at is, when we're building relationships, it's just asking questions. That's all it is. It's just asking questions, getting to know the person. They'll likely ask you questions too and engage you, so you guys could get to know each other. And the whole goal of this is, like, like I said, to get to know them. But if a working relationship happens, it happens organically. It's not forced. You're not pushing them. You're not saying, hey, check my link out right now. But if you start getting signs, meaning like the person that you're talking to as you're building the relationship, you're like, hey, I know you said you were struggling to get to $10,000 a month in your business. I actually just made a training the other day, like a little short video mini training on how to get there. You want me to send that over? And they say, yes, definitely. You send it over. They love it. Then you send them over some more value. You're building a relationship there. You're helping them out. You're getting to know them. And then if they keep saying yes and keep engaging you, then it's like, hey, well, I'm actually running a program right now to help you reach XYZ. Sounds like it would be really helpful. Do you want me to send the link? So does that kind of make sense? It's like just asking questions, giving value, building that relationship.
Yeah.
And once you start getting that yes engagement consistently, then it's time to say, hey, I have this going on. I invite you into this growth. You're inviting them into it. You're not pushing them into it.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's, I think there's there's a balance there, right? Because on one end, you don't want to be constantly doing relationship building without the ask. But also I understand that if you ask too fast, it's just like, oh, you're just like a crummy salesman trying to sell me something. So do you have that? Like, do you know how to play that balancing act, or is it like a feel type of thing? Like, how do you figure that out?
Absolutely. So that's great that you brought that up, because if you go in too quickly, even if doesn't matter if it's through the DMs or you're on a sales call, if you go into your offer too quickly, it's just going to repulse people. They're going to completely disengage with whatever it is that you were talking about. And they'll be like, ugh, like, I know you're just trying to sell me something. You know what I mean? It just doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel aligned. So you can't ask too early. But like I said, when you start to know is when you start to get, hey, I'm struggling. If let's say they're saying, I'm struggling with sales. I'm struggling with getting my business to a certain point. If that's something that I could help with, then I start asking them, hey, a lot of my students struggle with this in the beginning too. Can I send you something that might help? They say yes. And then you start getting permission. You start asking for permission to send them things or help them out, and they're open to it. Then it's time to start engaging them into hey, let's jump on a call. Maybe I could help. This is all about permission-based selling. That's all it is. You're always asking permission. Even part of what I teach, like I said in the scripts, on the actual phone, on the sales scripts, I'm always asking questions hey, I have a really important question. Is it okay if I ask you? You want them to say yes. You want them to give you that permission, because if you're just blabbing the whole time and talking the whole time, people just disengage, and they just don't feel like they're able to connect with you. They don't feel like they could trust you or even open up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I liked what you said there, which I didn't think about, which from a psychology standpoint, if we're going to go there for a second, the idea of asking for permission and letting people say yes and getting that sort of yes flow, meaning that they're saying yes to you and you guys are having that conversation. I feel like that really gets to allow them, number one, to feel comfortable, like you said, and then it lets them choose their adventure. It reminds me of those Goosebumps books where you get to choose your path. But in this case, it's choosing to say yes to this process with you, which I think is really awesome.
Right.
Now, with all this being said, now we've talked about making aligned offers. We've talked about building relationships. We've talked about figuring out your dream client, getting permission. These are all really great tips, and I really like that. But when we talked about it a little bit earlier, you said that there is something that gets in the way of people being really able to start to actually do this effectively. You mentioned one major mistake that you actually made as well, that you're working on and making sure that doesn't get in the way. What was that thing?
So just so I make sure I understand the question, you're saying what is stopping me from selling?
Not use so earlier we were discussing that something commonly gets in the way for a lot of people and causes them in their mindset to make it more difficult to be able to sell. What's that number one issue that you see commonly?
Yeah, so there's two things, and the first biggest one is is even being open to learning how to sell. Even like for me, like I had to put my ego aside. I thought I had it all figured out. I was like, oh, I'm the best at marketing. I know what I'm doing. I could get clients. But it was only once I put my ego aside and I was like, wow, I need to learn how to sell. I need to learn how to facilitate these relationships and grow relationships and close deals. That was when my life started to turn around, was when I dedicated myself to master the art of selling. So that's number one is even being open to it, putting your ego aside and being like, I can learn something here, having that growth mindset there. So that's the first thing. The second thing is once you're open to it and you're going through the process, there's going to be a lot of things that hold you back. There's going to be a lot of insecurities from maybe even years ago that you buried that are going to come up. It could be anything from like fear of rejection, and like any type of insecurity that comes up that like, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I can't help this person. There could be your guilty conscience coming in of taking money from them. There could be a million things, but those things can definitely hold you back. But the way that I help my clients get around this is we need to learn the basics. We need to get clear on like, okay, where is this coming from? Like where is this fear of rejection actually coming from in the first place? And we need to find a way to have you feel so confident in your sales process and what you're doing and change that mindset, change that energy so that you could start selling without that holding you back. You start selling as your most authentic self. You care less about what people think. You're not as connected to the outcome. Because what really held me back a lot, just from a personal standpoint, was I was always looking to make the sale, right? Like every time I got on the phone, I was almost like, again, this is kind of embarrassing to say because I've totally shifted my mindset over the past few years, but I was like almost looking at it like I was in a numbers game in the company I was in. Like it was all about numbers, like how many sales can you make? So it kind of ingrained that in me and it felt so gross. It felt so wrong. So I was like, I need to change this. And then once I started changing it, that's when my numbers actually shot up, when I actually truly cared about the client, truly cared about helping them. Whether they signed up with me or not, I wanted to help them. And that was when my numbers changed, my life changed. I started making more money. I was more abundant because when you're focused on the numbers and you're focused on the outcome, you're going to feel so anxious. You're going to feel like you're forcing, you're pushy, all these negative things that I want my clients to get away from. So the way that we reframe that is like, we look at it as like, dude, what are you trying to do? You're just trying to help them. You're having a conversation. You're getting to know them. Disconnect from the outcome of like whether they sign up with your program or not. Your intention should always be to get on the phone, get to know them, and see if you could help, see if they'll be a good fit. And that's it. So I know that I kind of rambled there for a second, but that's really what changed it for me was like when those things holding you back, those insecurities, you got to find out what they are and how you can shift your mindset and your energy around those.
Yeah, and you know, your course and what you're building out, your platform is the energy of selling, right? You're taking on these platforms and these businesses to teach them an effective sales system. But I think underneath that, you talked about is the energy of selling, which I think is so powerful. And you know, one of the reasons that I'm like really excited about talking about this, you know, I obviously work in the, you know, psychological field, so I think about this all the time. But those little insecurities, the time that you were beat up as a kid, like the time that you never felt good enough when you were younger, or even, you know, as a teenager or what have you, you know, the time that you had a really bad breakup or a terrible relationship. We actually talked about this earlier. All of these little things play into you needing to sell. And I really loved what you said earlier, which was you got to disconnect from the outcome. Like this is, you know, something about something more. It's about actually caring. So how, like, what are some things you try to talk to people about? You mentioned them before, but like, how do you work on someone's energy, or what are some things that you try to teach people about making sure that you have the right energy? So when you're selling, you're doing it in an authentic and effective way. Like what do you try to tell people about that?
Absolutely. So, and just so before I get into that, just so we're clear on like what sales actually is, sales literally is a transfer of your energy. So if you're feeling like this is a common one that comes up. If you feel insecure about money or taking someone's money for your services and like getting paid the money that you deserve, that comes up a lot. But if you're going through your call and you're at the point where you're ready to ask for their investment, they're going to feel that energy come up. They're going to feel that closed offness. They're going to feel that. So there's a number of ways that I go through how to actually work through this. The first one is going through your mindset, because your mind has been focused on this forever, for your most of your life, majority of your life. You have your set money story and how you look at money. So we need to first reframe that, but then also we need to start having you practice. It's because just like anything else, it's all about repetition. I'm not going to give you one little thing and it's going to be like, oh, everything's gone. Like I have no more fear of rejection. I have no more fear about my money story. I'm abundant. This is it. No, it's going to take work. It's going to take repetition. And that's why we do things like role play and we have scripts that you can practice, because at the end of the day, the only way you're going to get really better at it is as you change your mindset, you're also practicing it. So going through that part of your sales script where you're like asking for that investment, you start to feel more comfortable with it. You feel more confident. And then people will start saying yes. They'll start saying yes to you more and more. Your confidence grows even more. And then you're transferring that authentic, powerful energy to your prospects when you're on the phone. So it's kind of a two-piecer there. It's working on that mindset so you can shift your energy around the way you look at sales and that whole sales psychology. And then also repetition, practicing. We do things, I'll have live sales call breakdowns where we'll go through a recorded sales call, because the problem is even if I have clients that think they're really good at selling, but there's things that you can't see as an insider. Only like a coach or a consultant or a mentor from the outside looking in can see those things. You know what I mean? Like you could see it as you watch that recorded call, like, hey, here's where we can improve here. It's just like anything else. A yoga teacher, even the best yoga teachers in the world, they still want to be taught yoga from an instructor, even if they're not as good, because they can't see all the poses they're doing from the outside. You know what I mean? The teacher might come over and say, hey, you need to adjust your hips here. You need to move your leg this way. And that's fine. Everyone needs that. Everyone needs someone looking at and being like, hey, here's where we can improve. Here's where we can make an adjustment. So that's really like what we kind of do and how we break that down.
Yeah, and I think, you made so many really good points there. I mean, one thing that I didn't even think about, which like is very true, is, and again, when we're talking about selling, we're not just talking about selling like, $5, like little pamphlet or PDF, right? We're talking about if you have a product and let's say it's, $100, $200, obviously, like we talked about before, if it's a higher ticket item, like 1,000 plus, you really need to have an effective process. And one thing I didn't even realize that I didn't know about is having a sales script. So that's a really cool point. And I do want to talk about that a little bit. So, and also you mentioned having a coach, right? Which I think is also very important, because even if I don't have, let's say, a higher ticket item, or if I do have a higher ticket item and I am participating in these sales calls, like I might be making some mistakes here and I need like a guru, or I need that black belt in selling to come over and tell me like, dude, you pushed way too hard there. Or like, this is how I would phrase it. Or like, I think you need to go a little bit softer and build your relationship here. Like you talking about like sales aligning and building relationships. I think those are really two like core tenets. And like, I'm going to take that away from this as well. But like, let's talk a little bit about like why do you need a script? Like, and like, do you use a script for every product? Do you use a script for high level like products? Like, so why do you need a script? And tell me a little bit more about that.
Definitely. So you brought up a really good point too, before I get to the scripts, is the high and low ticket. So the pricing is really important here, because to answer your question really quick, I'll get into this deeper in a second, but usually you only need a sales script if you're selling high ticket. If you're selling, and I always love getting on sales calls just because it's that human connection. You're more likely to make a sale than if you're trying to sell through a funnel, like a sales page, or sell through the DMs, it's always good to have that human connection. If you're going to have a client relationship, it's good to set that tone and the expectations. But the other thing here is that the importance of pricing your product is going to make the difference on your client relationship. And what I mean by that is I never tell my clients, I'm always like, never sell something less than $1,000. If you're selling like a month-to-month service or like a 90-day program, because what ends up happening is, let's say I'm selling something for $200. It's a 90-day program. It's $200 a month. What's going to happen is the client isn't going to take it that seriously. They're not that energetically invested into the program, because all money is and all sales is, like we said, it's a transfer of energy. So when I'm selling my condensed 90-day program, they're giving me money. That's an exchange of energy. The lower that exchange of energy is, so just to give you some context here, I have years and years of experience of selling. I went through a lot of pain, challenges, built businesses, and I'm condensing all that pain into a 90-day program for you. And then if they don't pay like an equal energy exchange there's going to be resentment, and there's also going to be a lower engagement. They're not going to take it as seriously. They might not show up to calls that often. They might not do their homework. They might not get those things done, because the higher investment, like the more money that they invest into your program, the more energetically invested they are into that. They're going to take it more seriously. And that's really important, especially as a coach or a consultant. You want your clients to take what you're doing seriously, because otherwise it's a waste of your time and a waste of theirs. You know what I mean? You want to make sure that they're energetically invested into what you're doing. So I wanted to hit on that first, because I always believe in selling a high ticket. The only reason I think you should ever sell something low ticket is to get them into your pipeline, so you could start nurturing them and building relationships, because not everybody's ready to buy that high ticket thing. If you're selling a product for 5, 10K, someone just might be getting started in their journey and they're like, okay, I don't have that money yet, but I still want to learn. And you're selling like a $50 ebook or $100 course or whatever, that's fine. You get them in your pipeline, they're learning, they're implementing, they're able to start making more money on their own. And then when they're ready, then they could buy that high ticket thing. So just wanted to kind of pre-frame that there into the script now.
Well, before we get to that, I really want to take a second here, because what you just said, no one's taught me, right? And I think of everything you've said right now, that's one thing that like we don't talk about a lot, but it's also uncomfortable to talk about, is pricing. And like, what's a good price for something? What's a bad, like maybe not an effective price for something? And the energy exchange idea I really love, because again, at the end of the day, like if I put $2,000 into something, it feels like a lot more. And as such, I'm going to care about it a lot more, even if the thing I bought isn't actually that good. Not to say that that's the case. We will obviously want something to be good too, but there is that kind of idea that like, now I've put in my 2K, I'm going to be engaged because I put my money into this. I've put my energy into this, and I want this to work, as opposed to, let's say it's 100, 200, 300. Yeah, that's a lot of money, but it's not going to maybe kill me. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think psychologically that's so powerful. And it's something that I think we really need to think about. So for anyone listening, like if you are trying to create a product, you are trying to build that out, like, is this something that you're willing to charge less for because you don't feel as energetically invested and you don't want as much engagement? Or are you really trying to weed out some people because you only want the most engaged people and you want them to put in a higher level of investment so that they'll be there with you? I think that's a really powerful statement.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to kind of also going off that point is the thing that happens. So if you're selling a product, that's different than selling a service. So whenever you're selling, you could sell a product at a lower ticket because you record, let's say it's a course, you recorded it, it's already done. You know what I mean? You're not putting any more time and energy into it really. But if you're selling a service, like let's say you're a coach or you're a mentor, or you're doing something to help someone on a weekly or monthly basis, then at that point, if you're selling, let's say I was to sell energy of selling a 90-day program, if I were to sell that at $50 a month, I'd be a joke. No one would take me seriously. You know what I mean? So like, how can you expect someone paying $50 a month for all this value that they're getting they won't look, they literally will not take it seriously. It will be a joke. So it's kind of like I said, putting or taking in the energy that you put into that program. So yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. And I think what you just said there was so interesting to me because, like, I know personally, I know med students, I know residents, I know other health professionals. Like you just said, like selling something at $50 is a joke. I know people who are scared to sell their thing for $10. I know people who are scared to sell their thing for a cost because people have gotten so used to, like, I'm talking about my givers out there. There's a huge subset of the population, health professionals especially, who are such givers that they're afraid to sell because their whole life they've wanted to be altruistic and compassionate, which I love, but they feel so uncomfortable putting a price on it. And then obviously there's the other end of the spectrum who are complete, insert word here, who charge things ridiculously and have no compassion. And yeah, they get a lot of money, but then they come off like terrible human beings. So I think there is that balance, like you said, of how much I price it, where I'm being compassionate, I'm aligned. And like you said before, I think a really powerful point there is if it's a product that's repeatable and you're not putting, direct energy into it, you can price it lower. But if you're providing a service where you have to be in it, it needs to be a higher cost.
Yeah. And you brought up a point there where I'm going to get a little vulnerable for a second here.
Sure.
Because so my biggest strength is my compassion. It's how much I care. And I used to look at that as a weakness. And until I started to look at that as a strength was when I started to, like I said, sell more because I started to care more about my clients and other people. But the reason that I'm bringing this up is because in the beginning of my journey, I was doing that exact thing. I was valuing myself. I was selling at ridiculously low price points. And the reason I want to bring this up is because this is like, it all comes back to the energy again. It's think about whether you're a physician. I don't care what you do. If you're a physician, if you're a coach, if whoever you are, and you're selling a service, I want you to think about this for a second. I want you to think about how much money did you invest? How much energy and time did you invest to get to where you are today? To get to know all the knowledge that you know, the knowledge that you're selling. How much time, money, energy, how much did you invest? It's probably going to be a lot. I'm assuming like you put a lot in, and you put a lot into that journey. So think about this. You're condensing that huge learning curve, all that pain and challenges you went through, you're condensing that into a program. Now you tell me this, is condensing all that so people could bypass all that pain and challenges that you went through and save all that time on their journey. Is that worth paying $3,000 for instance? Probably. Yeah, absolutely. And that's once my mindset started to change around sales, was because I'm like, holy shit, like I'm selling my stuff for hundreds of dollars a month for my services, my time. It was just because I undervalued myself. I didn't see like, wow, I put in so much to get to where I'm at today, and I have so much value to give. So once we could change our mindset around that, then it's like, okay, we could start raising our prices. You might even be listening to this and thinking like, wow, I'm really not selling at the price point that I should be. But that's okay. Sometimes we need to get to this point of frustration like I did. I was super frustrated. I was like, I'm not making any money. I'm putting in all this time. I'm working 24/7, but I have nothing to show for it. So it's just getting that mindset around like, wow, I put in all this energy, and then you get to value yourself at what you think that is worth. So just want to share that.
Yeah. No, I think that's, again, that's super powerful. And I think it's really important for people to look, you also don't want to go crazy on the other end, right? Like you don't want to charge people $20,000 when you don't have the skills yet, right? But with that, what we're talking about here is we're talking about very competent people that are good at what they do, or are at least a lot better than a good portion of people who have a service that, like, you don't need to charge $20 an hour or $30 an hour or whatever for something where you're putting your energy in, where you really are an expert. There's probably a lot more effective ways of doing that. And I think it's a great topic. And I think like even the idea of pricing, I know it's very personal and it's going to be based, like, that's why you need a coach or you need someone like you, is because it is personal and it is something that you will need to sort of tease out, like what's the right price for your product and why, and who are you selling to and who's your ideal client and all those things. But
Yep.
I just think, I think it's a really important thing for people to understand. Like, if you sell low, one of the things you're saying is you don't value yourself, which I think is a very interesting concept when it comes to something like providing a service. So now, again, for the, you know, we talked about a lot here. Do you still have time, by the way?
I do. Yep.
Okay, awesome. So one thing I wanted to dig into was the script, because I think that's also something that I don't necessarily think I know much about, but I think is also very important. Why do we need a script for selling, and why is that important?
Yeah. So when it comes to scripts, so here's the thing too. I always use myself because I was my first client. But the thing that I want to bring to everyone's attention is I always thought scripts were stupid. I was like, I'm going to sound like a robot. I don't need scripts. I could just freeball it. I could rely on my intuition, whatever your excuses. The problem with that is if you're ever going to build a business that you can scale, you can grow, you can't rely on your intuition for your sales calls. You just can't. Everyone's different. And sales calls are one of the most, anything could happen. They're not stable. You need something to ground you. You need something to feel confident in. You know what I mean? So, and that script provides that to you. So what these scripts do is it gives you a flow to your sales calls. So I'll walk you through what that flow looks like. And there's steps here that we go through. There's different levels. And you always start at, like, I'm not going to start off, for instance, talking about my offer. Just wouldn't make sense. That's when people get repulsed. So the very first thing, I'll walk you through these steps. The first step is you want to get on the phone. You want to build rapport. You want to get to know this person and have a human connection. Because if you don't, if you bypass this little step that seems little, but it's so important, it's going to feel very transactional. The person isn't going to feel very connected to you. You want to start building a relationship with them on that call, because your client relationship starts on your sales call. So that's the first thing, is building rapport. And then the next thing is you want to kind of frame what the sales call is going to look like. Give the agenda for the call. So you want to be like, okay, so for today's call, we're going to be going through X, Y, Z. And you're going to tell them, like, I'm going to be asking you some questions. Then we're going to see if this program is a good fit for you. And if it does sound like it's a good fit for you, I'll walk you through the enrollment process. How's that sound? And you get their permission. Yep, sounds good. Okay, cool. We can move on to the next phase. So that's kind of like the pre-framing, letting them know the agenda for the call. And the next step is really getting to know where they're currently at on their journey and where they want to end up. So this is when you're asking them questions. Your script literally has these questions listed out on them, where you're asking them, okay, where are you at in your journey? And then you get to know where they're currently at. And then you also get to know what their future vision looks like, because these are all important things for you to know. Because when you're going to the point where, if they are a good fit and you want to extend an offer, if they want to work with you, you want to be able to tie that back to their vision and tie that back to their current situation. For instance, if, let's say, Taylor, you came to me and you're like, hey, I'm trying to learn how to sell. I want to scale my business to X amount of dollars, but I'm only making this. I would come back to that and tie that into, like, if like, let's say you had an objection come up, be like, oh, I don't know if this is right for you. I'd be like, well, this is your goal. This is where you want to be. Does that make it worth it for your investment? So getting to know where they're at and where they want to be is important. Then next is their challenges, like what challenges, what pain points are really coming up for them. You want to get to really hone in on that. And then next is really, like, you want to gauge how committed they are. Gauge how committed they are to themselves, into hitting those goals and their vision. And then really inviting them into that growth if they are a good fit. And then after that, that's when you really tell them about your offer, see if it aligns, and then you give them that choice. That's when you're ready to ask them and extend your offer. So when you go to close a deal, all you're doing is you're giving them a choice. You're saying, hey, this is everything we went through. This is my offer. Here's a choice. You could either move forward and we could do this, or you could not. You know what I mean? We're never ever pushing someone. I never teach anyone to push someone or force someone into working with you, especially if they're not a good fit. And then really from there, if they decide that this is the point where objections come up, and that's a whole different conversation. We go through like how to prevent objections or handle objections as they come up. But then really from there, like let's say best case scenario, they're like, yes, let's do this. And that's when you walk them through, okay, here's the next steps to get enrolled in the program. So that's like the ultimate flow to the call. And this script, like I said, that's your frame. It keeps you grounded. You know what questions to ask in what order, and you keep that conversation going. And this allows the client, the potential client, to relax. They could open up. They could tell you everything about their journey, their challenges. And the good thing about it too is the last point I'm going to bring up about the scripts is it's all mostly questions. On sales calls, you should only be talking about 20% of the time. People flip that. They as the coach or the person on the call, they talk 80% of the time. Guess what that does? Instant sales resistance. People instantly disengage with you. Because why would you ever like go out to dinner or something with someone and they just talk the entire time? They don't listen. You don't even get a word in. So like think about that. So you want the client to be talking most of the time so they have the opportunity to open up and they could feel more trusting. So that's really the whole purpose of the script.
Well, I think, because again, I don't use scripts, but obviously like for me, I want to start to build out services at some point. I want to be able to do this. And you just brought up so many great points to this. And as a business owner, one of the things that you mentioned that I think is just so important is scaling, because we all want to scale at some point to offer the services to a lot of people. If you don't have this down pat and you can't train people and you can't create a process, and I think obviously this is something that you teach people how to do, if you don't have this set in stone, you're not going to be able to replicate this, to teach other people how to do it, and to build out your process. And I think it's just so powerful. And then like the other points you're saying, like get to really know the person, understand their challenges, understand their level of commitment. You're really getting to know the person before you even ask anything. And number one, that lets you understand, where they're coming from. And maybe like you talked about before, maybe you shouldn't sell to them if you're not aligned. Maybe what you're offering isn't, because I think a lot of times also the trap is you're selling even if it's not aligned. And then that gets you in trouble when you're trying to sell something you don't even have, right? So I just think it's what you've provided here, even the framework is just so powerful and important. So I'm going to follow up this whole question again. We've talked about a lot of topics here. We actually hit a lot of really important stuff. We hit like energy of selling, like the mindset, the energy, like common issues, like getting like your ego caught into this whole thing. We talked about the sales process and the sales script. Is there anything you feel like you wanted to say and we haven't touched on yet?
That was really like the meat of like actually what goes on with sales, like everything from like the most important thing that if you leave this podcast, that you listen to this, the one thing that I want you to remember is just actually like the energy that goes into selling. It's not just about getting on the phone and having a transaction. It's about showing up as your most powerful, confident, authentic self. And you are literally there. And I'm not BSing you when I say this, like I do this, I practice it every single day. I am going on there to help people. I'm not going on there to sell them. If it organically, like I said, if it's a good fit, I extend that offer. It's their choice. No one's forcing, no one's pushing. So just remember the energy that you put behind everything that you do and say in your sales process is going to come out. It's going to rub off on people. So you want to make sure that you're coming from a confident, aligned place.
Amazing. That was awesome. And I think it really comes across even as we're talking about this conversation is about helping people and caring about them. And if that converts into something you can help them with, great. But you're not trying to force people. You're not trying to push people. You're trying to pull them in a process you think is going to be helpful for them. So Dave, look, I loved everything you said. I think it's awesome. Can you tell people about your course?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now I have a course. It's called The Energy of Selling. And basically what it is, it's for anyone, whether you're a coach, a consultant, if you have a service-based business, everything that we went through on this podcast, I teach you how to build the scripts, build the processes. We go through the coaching of the live sales call breakdowns, how to close the deal. So pretty much everything from A to Z. So you learn how to sell, and learn how to sell as like your most confident, authentic, and aligned self. And you don't have to be pushy or salesy or feel any type of not feel like yourself, and feel like you, because a lot of the times, just so you know, like for me too, like I was related back to me, I did not like selling. I did not like it when I first started, but now I'm excited to get on calls because I completely shifted my mindset, shifted my energy around it. So that's really what I teach, is I want people to enjoy selling more. I don't want them to look at it as something negative. I really want to, my mission in the world is to make people feel like they can enjoy it more, that it's a good thing. It's a good thing to get out there and sell your services so you can impact more lives. It's really what I'm doing here. And that's what we're all about at the Energy of Selling.
That's awesome. I mean, I love it. I think it's great what you're providing. I think that people who really want to build out a service, build out something, a process that they really believe in, I think all of those reasons, I think that's why they need to look to you to get some help. And I think you come off, when you're doing this, it's really authentic. Like there's no BS here. You're taking people who want to help other people. Mm-hmm. They have created something that they care about. They want to give that to the world and have other people also build out their awesome lives. And you're there to help them with that process. I think that's great.
Exactly it. That's it. Yep.
It's really, I mean, it's aligned with me, which is why I love talking to you too. It's like, it's helping people help people. And what's cooler? Yeah. It's like, what's cooler than helping people help people and then making the collective, happier, more fulfilled, more excited about life and enjoying it. Because again, there's a lot of terrible things out there, and there's depression, and there's anxiety, there's stress. And meanwhile, there's people like you that, come out here and really want to help people. And I think that's awesome. So David, you've been on with me for quite some time now on this episode. I really appreciate your time. How can people find you online or reach out to you?
Absolutely. So the best way to find me online is on Instagram. So if you just type in my name, David Lacamera, I will come up on Instagram. And then also there's just a link in my bio on Instagram for Energy of Selling. If you just want to check out what's included in everything in the 90-day program, you could also shoot me a DM on there, and I'm pretty responsive on there. So the best way to reach me is Instagram.
Awesome. Is your Instagram at David Lacamera?
Yep. Just my name,
awesome.
At David Lacamera.
Perfect. So for everyone listening today, please check out Dave's Instagram if you're at all interested. If you're not, that's cool too. I hope you got some value from this conversation. Dave, thank you so much for your time. That was super fun. I really did honestly learn a lot. And that was great. Thanks for being on.
Of course, man. This was a blast. I love it.
Awesome. Take care.